Okay, I'd like to call the Budget Review Committee to order. It's Tuesday, May 1st, 2018, and it's 7 p.m., and we're in the Aldermanic Chamber. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alderman at Large Laurie Wilshire. Here. Alderman at Large Brian McCarthy. Present. Alderman at Large Michael O'Brien is present. Alderman at Large Shoshana Kelly. Here. Alderman at Large David Tenza.
Here.
Alderwoman Jan Smith is absent. And the chair, Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Also, Mr. Chairman, in attendance, we have Alderman Melissa Goja, Alderman Harriet Gathright, and Alderman Jettie.
Okay. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anybody that would like to make a public comment to the Budget Committee? Seeing none. Communications.
There is none.
Unfinished business resolutions.
Yes, we have R-18-019, relative to the adoption of fiscal year 2019 proposed budget for the City of Nashua General Enterprise and Special Revenue Funds. And to remind, there will be a public hearing which will be scheduled on May 17th at 7 p.m. at Nashua High School North Auditorium.
Okay, remember, we didn't put it on the table. We just postponed it till the next budget meeting, which is tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk public safety, the fire department, 152, and the revenue is on page 42, and the appropriations are on page 150. And with that, I will turn it over to the fire department to make their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Brian Rhodes. I am the Chief of Department for National Fire Rescue. I'd like to start out by saying first to our new elected board, welcome. We look forward to working with you. I think we've worked very well in the past with some of the veteran members here. We have an organization that we're very proud of. We do a lot of great things. We have a lot of great employees, and we're no different than probably any of the other organizations or other departments that have come before you. We do our level best. We beat up our contractors. We beat up our suppliers for things. We try to do the best we can with the dollars that you appropriate for us.
Okay.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd please like to introduce, we have Chair of the Board, Paul Grant. We also have Commissioner Marquis in the back. And with me to answer questions is Assistant Chief Walker to my left and Superintendent Jeremy Audette of the Fire Alarm Division to my right.
Okay. And you have a presentation you want to,
We do. I guess,
or do you want to have an overview first?
well, I guess I'd like to frame it before we get into that. I hope that the members of the board found our management overview document helpful. We worked awful hard on that document to kind of show Nashua Fire Rescue from the inside out. There's not much that I guess we don't do anymore in the city of Nashua. Our roles have changed dramatically from just fighting fires and going to car accidents and doing medicals. As you all know, at the mayor's direction, in November of 16, we initiated the Safe Station program, which I think is, in my 30-plus years as an employee of the city of Nashua, is the greatest collaboration that I have ever seen of public and private that was not for someone's personal gain, but for the good of the whole. Again, we're very proud of that program, and we're very proud of the members of Nashua Fire Rescue who have really embraced the program. This year, we put in with Chief Gallup, when Chief Gallup was still here, we worked on the budget. And we, last year at this particular meeting, we outlined that we have we have some shortfalls in service delivery that was affecting our employees and potentially the citizens of Nashua, and we were able to cobble our way through it last year. This year, we're coming in, and the only thing we are asking for different this year, other than the contractual obligation we have to our employees, is the addition of, it would be 4 employees to bolster our staff in our fire alarm division. Our fire alarm division is located at 38 Lake Street, and that is where everything emergency begins and ends in the city of Nashua for us, and everything in between. This group, there are 2 members of the fire alarm division, 2 fire dispatchers who work 24/7. Well, there's 4 people, they split it up, so there's 2 people at a time. This staffing model has been the same since the mid-1970s. In the mid-1970s, we were probably doing, I think we were doing about 2,000 to 2,500 calls for service. Last year, we did over 35,000 calls for service. We've been tracking this really hard over the last 2 years. Superintendent Audette has done a great job in there. But that's part of this presentation we're going to show you this evening, to show you the real data of why we have a problem and why we feel it's a problem, a potential problem for the safety of not only our city employees, but for the public in general. We actually, we'll show you data, and we actually have some unedited, untouched, uncut video from the fire alarm office, from different incidents that you can hear the utter chaos that is going on in there with 2 people. Again, I won't steal superintendent's thunder on that, but in a nutshell, that's what we're looking for this year. We're looking to maintain and meet the obligation of the current CBA that we have to meet, but we're looking to add some assistance and help to that fire alarm division. Our operating budget, we're no different than anyone else in the city department, I guess. We're flat for the 8th year in a row. As we all know, goods and services have gone up tremendously, and we're doing the best we can to keep our fleet of over 40 rubber-tired vehicles on the road. Unfortunately, we're under mandates from the federal government as far as the EPA, and all our newer apparatus, it's run by a computer now. And there is all kinds of emission control things that go on with it, and when it says I'm not going to run anymore, it doesn't run. And unfortunately, it's very costly to do that. So internal adjustments that we've had to make was just tires, a mundane item like a tire. We pride ourselves on having one of the best fleets in New England, and we have, I will say unequivocally, probably the best mechanical division in New England and beyond. And 3 things that we do not mess with. We do not mess with steering, brakes, or tires. And we've gone many years with a particular brand, and we found that they're very costly and they weren't wearing as well. So the mechanical division, they did a test on some of our apparatus, and we found we're getting much more longevity out of a set of tires, but they cost probably 1/4 to 1/3% more than the other ones. It's a tough balance. It's a tough balance we're trying to do, but as you will see in the presentation, part of this is out of our control. When our call volume goes up anywhere from 2 to 5 to 10% in a year, that just means that percentage of the time more that our vehicles are on the road. And again, we don't have the luxury of having vehicles broke down and not being able to provide the service that the city requires, expects, and actually that we demand of our members. So That's about it in a nutshell for us.
Very good.
Just for the record, Commissioner Gage has arrived too as
Mr.
well.
Chairman, I would just like also to recognize for the roster that we were joined by Commissioner Gage. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, all set for the,
Okay. Thank
Jeremy,
you,
if you
Chief.
just give me 1 second. I'll just-
Certainly. Assistant Chief Walker is passing out copies of the PowerPoint presentation in case something doesn't transfer very well visually and for notes.
just so the stenographer can get it, identify yourself by name.
Yes,
so-
my name is Jeremy Audette, Audette, and I'm the superintendent of the fire alarm for the Nashua Fire Rescue.
Do you have enough to leave 3 here? One for the record? Yeah. Okay, yeah, or I could leave mine. All right, thank you.
So again, thank you, Commissioner Dowd and Chief Rhodes. I've had the pleasure of being with the Nashua Fire Rescue. This is my 23rd year. All of that time has been served in the Fire Alarm Communications Division. And I've risen to the rank of superintendent and have served in that capacity in the past 7 years. And in that time, I've strived to show beyond just that gut feeling that, boy, we are really much busier than we have been, and how can we make this better, and how can we improve the conditions, and also how we deliver that service. So this is an overview of some statistics we compiled and some data that it really does speak for itself. So let's go to that. So we're going to do a comparison of the fire alarm staffing model that Chief Rhodes alluded to a little earlier that started in 1977. We hired a 8th full-time dispatcher, going to a full-time staffing model of 2 dispatchers 24 hours a day. And in 1977, we had a call volume of 2,012 calls. Our population from the 1970 census was about 55,820 people, and our rank and file numbered 129 members. In review of last year's numbers, we continue to have 2 full-time dispatchers 24 hours a day, handling now well over 35,000 calls, nearing 36,000 calls per year. That's calls for service. So we are providing a service to a citizen or a visitor or a business owner in the city. And this is from the 2014 census of 87,000 residents and 259, which, as we know, during the day swells considerably for commerce and business. And our staff rank and file is now up to 176 members. Our model in division of the tasks and operations that our dispatchers do is a radio operator, the person who is primarily talking to the responders, sending them on calls, updating their information, and a telephone operator, the individual that's responsible for all those incoming phone calls, starting a call for service and beginning that information. And that is also the same person responsible to update and contact other city agencies or persons of interest that may be related to an event. Altogether, there are 16 phone lines that this one person will be responsible to answer at any point in time. Those include tie lines to the airport, the police department, direct ring downs of emergency calls from 911, business lines, elevator emergency lines, and access control. This person is also responsible to notify a property representative, a utility, the police department, and other agencies that may be required as an emergency evolves.
Just so I could add a little insight for the board. So the direct tie lines, that means from the Nashua Airport Control Tower, they have a phone, you pick up the phone and it rings directly in Nashua Fire Alarm. The Nashua Police have a phone, they pick up, it rings, they don't have to dial a number, it rings directly. The 911 is the enhanced 911 system for the state of New Hampshire. The business lines are pretty simple. The elevators, most people don't know, mostly every elevator in the city of Nashua, when you push the call button, goes to Nashua Fire Rescue when you have a problem. That's a direct.
Very well aware.
Yeah.
Today, actually.
And additionally, we added the access controls with the addition of the safe station, where we really had no security in any of our buildings. So we've added access controls at headquarters and at Lake Street, where our civilian personnel are located. And additionally, to help protect the city's interests and our members, we're looking to add cameras to that so that the fire alarm office can still have eyes on the station when the companies are out of service. For, God forbid, a door gets left open, a door malfunctions or something like that, someone comes to a station and needs assistance, and we don't have a phone line there, but they have that, so.
Thank you, Chief. So this is a photo of one of our workstations, and the operator, one of our senior dispatchers. As you can see, there's about 7 monitors in front of them. Our primary CAD program, which is our computer-aided dispatch, runs about 4 monitors of its own. And then there's automatic vehicle location systems for the ambulance and eventually for the fire department, along with mapping screens from 911, which is the location of the calling party, and all the questions that they ask and give us when we receive those medical determinants. There's radio console, and then there's integration to the phone lines, trying to make their jobs easier so they're not cradling a handset in their ears. So what are some of these requests? They're very varied. As my tenure with the department has gone on, it has varied greatly. We have a public that is used to receiving and having access to assistance immediately on whatever the scope of request could be. So we have those requests for what we consider our primary goal and task, which are those emergencies, both fire, medical, and environmental. Those we know about. Then there's other issues that we receive daily, which are people reporting code violation in rental properties or unsafe conditions at stores or businesses that they may have visited while in the city, along with road hazards. Going on to that, then we have non-emergency situations which we wouldn't consider a lights and sirens event, but require an immediate response. By delaying that can cause further issues. Then anything from a change in roadway status, fire hydrants, fire alarm systems at any of the city buildings that have protection, any change or alteration to sprinkler systems, halon systems, suppression systems, those are all recorded in the fire alarm division, along with building impairments such as broken elevators or other issues that may be at a site. Keeping track of the 4 dedicated 911 ambulances, and then also calling for additional ambulances as the need for EMS increases. From these events alone, then there's the notification to other local and state agencies, the federal level, emergency management or other management companies, because they have a vested interest in their properties and want to know what's going on. And all of this has to be documented. So the dispatchers are constantly making sure these are logged, because in our litigious society, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And then there's the calls that have nothing to do with us, but they don't know where else to call. So we're the referring agency, and we'll get them the assistance that they need. I was shocked by the statistics when I looked back at it, because a decade seemed like only a blink of an eye. But in that time, we've had a rollover of 8 dispatchers, persons that have either come close to or gotten older in their service time, but also younger people that came in not expecting the volume that they're dealing with. So in the past 10 years, you could consider the division would have fully turned over. So this is the benchmark that you'll see in most of the reports that we give you. Calls for service. So we're talking about responders, emergencies, service calls, safe stations, all those things are in these numbers. And you can see the very prominent increase of them over the last decade. But when I was looking at statistics, I said, these aren't just enough. So this next graphic, I think, is going to be probably one of the more impactful ones. And in 2016, I began to do an analysis of what are the actual phone calls happening to the dispatch center as a result of a call for service. So in the front row there, in the green graphic, is the calls for service each of those months. Behind that, in the taller column, is how many phone calls that those service calls generate. Statistically, it's anywhere from 2.5 to 3 times as many calls by an operator to deal with during that time frame. Then again, the trend continues in 2017, where the ratio is anywhere from 2.5 to 3 times the calls for service or actual phone calls handled by an operator. So in the comparison and actually tracking phone calls, whether they be made or received, in 2016, we recorded 73,000 phone calls received and made from our fire alarm operations. And then in 2017, that same number rose by 22%. I don't see this reducing. As you're going to see later on, we talk about what is going on in the world to cause such an influx of this. Well, if you didn't know, and if you didn't get a birthday card, 911 is still waiting, because this last February was the 50th anniversary of 911 in the United States. And last December was the 25th anniversary of the first text message. And numbers are showing that everyone, almost statistically, has a cell phone. And when you have everyone having access to a phone, not to the days where there was one phone at the house, and if your sister's on it, you had to wait, everyone has access, and everyone wants and has a need to find out what's going on. Just for information, and it's hard to quantify when we talk about statistics, but the radio operator in transactions on the radio, these were the numbers we analyzed for the year 2016 and 2017, and that is handled, again, by one primary operator. This is an example of the radio console position for one of our operators. Again, a lot of information. The radios now tell you the person keying up, time stamps, channels that they're on. There's so much more information coming into us. We sometimes refer to that as metadata, and just so much of it's streaming now. But what is it like? So here's an example of a fire that occurred in July of 2017 in one of our nursing homes in the city. The fire alarm box was received, and as the companies were pulling up, the first 911 call came from the facility reporting there was a fire in one of the nursing bedrooms. So here's an excerpt of all of the radio traffic and phone traffic that happens simultaneously.
Command 10-4, working fire. Brown, you copy that? Okay, working fire. Engine 4 and ladder 3 responded to working fire, 22 Hunt Street, Colville Nursing Home, Twin Lake Street, Acton Street. Engine command. Ladder 2, command. 3 and ladder 3. Responded to working fire.
Yeah, keep the working fire.
22 Hunt Street, Colville Nursing Home, Twin Lake Street, Acton Street, Channel 2,
We got
go in.
2 in the hallway right now. Engine 6 working on. Then we're going to need evacuation for some of these rooms. They're just protecting place at this point. And message. Do we have maintenance for anybody up there? Probably about the field. Is that
Channel
radio?
10, responded to working fire, 22 Hunt Street,
Yeah,
Colville
I do
Nursing
have
Home.
maintenance for me right now. I think the fire's under control. I'm going to check again with
So that's just an example of an incident that's just at its infancy. It's just beginning to progress. And what you heard there was the dispatcher was dispatching additional companies while the fireground was talking about vital information that they were now not able to monitor or listen to as they were getting additional resources to go to that scene. This event resulted in numerous ambulances being brought down to transport numerous patients out into other facilities and so forth, and would not have risen to and did not rise to an event that we would call back a dispatcher for, because we can't do that for just busyness. I mean, these are the calls that we are tasked with. This is definitely a more recent event, and this was for a call on January 23rd, and this was for a building fire. The very first phone call received, that dispatcher began that process to begin that call. The second 911 was from a female caller with her brother and their pets who had found refuge in a bathroom that had no windows or any other points of egress. At that point, that operator, who was actually the radio operator, then presumed the role of taking over that phone call and staying with the caller until they were rescued. The calls didn't stop, though, and you're going to hear, as he's talking to them and the dispatch of the call, there's additional 911 calls, and you can hear the caller saying, "Oh, my God," and is very agitated.
You guys cannot get out of the building, correct?
No, we cannot.
Okay, you're in the second floor bathroom?
Yes.
Okay. Is the door shut to the bathroom?
Oh my God.
Okay. Is the bathroom filling with smoke at all?
Engine 1, 4,
Slightly. Okay, but you guys can still breathe okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to stay on the phone with you until we get there, okay? How many people live in that building? Multiple apartments?
Between Locust Street and Charlotte. When you go on the driveway, go on the door.
Heavy fire showing upon arrival by the engine company. This is a multi-family or multi-tenement rental property. The subsequent calls, the female voice you heard was the 911 operator saying, "We believe Nashua has this. We're going to pass that on to them. Is anyone trapped?" And trying to assist with that. Just to show you the staffing model we have is at its capacity, is what we're trying to impart. But I didn't want to come in here and just bang my fist and say, we need more people. So I went to look at the private sector and see what it used for comparison tools in this. In a commercial call center, if you were to run one of those, you would use a formula called the Erlang C theory or formula, which is a queuing formula. So XYZ is selling Snuggies on TV, and you know they're going to get an influx of phone calls. You expect this many. How many operators should you staff? So you use this calculator and use just what we did for the last 2 years for calls during an average hour of the busy daytime hours as to what is going on. Now, in a commercial call center, you're doing this for profit, and your customer satisfaction is expected to be high. I would imagine, I believe you all agree that in an emergency call center, our expectation for quality assurance is to the nth degree. In this example, in this calculator, you plug in how many calls per hour, how many seconds long is the call, and then what would be the acceptable delay. And in here, what I put down was 1 ring, 3 seconds. 2 rings would be 6 seconds. And then how many operators would you need? Important to note under call duration when we talk about this is in a commercial call center, you want everything on that call to be done. So there's that wrap-up time at the end. So a 60-second phone call may take you another 60 seconds to enter the information and finish that. In our situation, that's just to get the call started. And there's still the operator's aspect and the dispatch of the call after. One of the other aspects we really wanted to key in on when we talked about our operations center is that in 2017, we were fortunate enough to have the funds to redo our dispatch center, redid the computer floor, and got all new furniture. This is that furniture, and we created in that room 3 workstations so that there can be 3 operators on duty at a time, all in the same room. A far cry from our previous days in the 90s on Court Street at the old Fire Central Station, where it was a countertop and you were within arm's reach of the person next to you. I thank you for your consideration in this matter. I would welcome any questions you may have.
Questions? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. You did bring up, but one thing, some familiarity to the operations a little bit, but does not fire alarm also listen to the fire ground transmission? And if the incident commander should miss a mayday or something, and could you explain the complexity of what happens when a mayday is issued?
Absolutely. Not to clutter the issue with a lot of statistics and numbers, but keep in mind that on duty at any one time are 40 firefighters with 40 radios. Any one of them could be requesting assistance. So take away the phone side of it. Take a fire ground aspect with just a first alarm assignment of 2 engines and a ladder, deputy chief and a shift maintenance technician. You have a large number of people that could be in need of help. And there's no queuing and telling them to stand by because their message is one of the utmost importance. In a mayday situation, as you alluded to, that firefighter is unable to self-rescue or is in duress and needs immediate assistance. And when an incident commander is at a scene and surrounded by running apparatus, chainsaws, persons in need of help, other responders arriving, their attention may be divided, and they may not be able to catch that mayday. The fire alarm operators also monitor maydays by just depressing the button of their radio so that we know that they're calling for help even if they're unable to speak. So that person then has the responsibility to find out what the assignment is of that person and relay that to the incident commander, broadcast that everyone else needs to stop transmissions. So these are just other complexities that go on with that. In the radio side of it, we talked about just the statistics of the numbers of calls and so forth. But we're talking about well over a dozen radio channels, and that's not including the channels that we listen to communities around us to see if they're in need of assistance or if there's something happening that we need to be aware of.
Questions? Alderman Jettie.
I don't know if you look at your third PowerPoint slide,
Yes.
it says in 1977, the call volume was 2,012 calls.
Yes.
And then in 2017, it went up to 35, almost 36,000.
That's correct.
But on slide 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 11, the graph?
All red?
Yeah,
Okay.
it looks like the calls in 2007 are 20,000.
You're gonna have to, when we plotted them in there and try to angle the 3D and trying to tilt, that may be the skewing of that.
But I think, Alderman, you're questioning 1977,
Right,
and that's showing 2007. We
Oh.
did a 10-year look back.
okay,
Most recently, yes,
thank you.
no problem.
Chief Rhodes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For the knowledge of the committee, one thing we haven't brought up yet is, in addition to being responsible for National Fire Rescue and the public, we also dispatch all 4 of AMR's ambulances 24/7, 365. So add that into the mix, and that figures into some of these numbers, that there are times that a fire company does not respond due to the call matrix that comes to us from Concord E911. So that adds an additional nights and weekends, an additional 8 people that our dispatchers are responsible for the safety and health because they all have radios as well.
Okay. Other questions? Alderman Jettie?
So, so could you, in plain language, what do you now have 4 dispatchers? You now have 2?
Oh,
We have 2 dispatchers around the clock, 24/7, 365. They work a split shift of a 10-hour day and a 14-hour night shift. So 2 are there for the day, 2 new ones come in at night.
and that model extrapolates out to a total of 8 full-time employees.
Okay.
So to add a third person 24 hours a day would be an additional 4 people.
Okay, and is that what you're asking? And is that
We-
different than what's in the mayor's budget?
No, we did initially, we proposed for half a year, knowing that what the constraints are on the city budget. We understand that. We understand where everyone's in the same boat. But we're grateful and we're confident that we could make that Q4 work for us. If we know there's some light at the end of the tunnel, knowing that our people, these people, I can't even begin to tell you, Alderman, the job they do for us. It's a thankless job. There's no glory in what they do. But the lives of literally 38 people, 24/7 of our employees depend on these people. And in the particular instance of the audio we had of the person trapped in the bathroom, that was our newest employee. And he's been with us
2 years.
2 years. That hopped right in and did a fantastic job to the point that we have nominated them for state awards, and we will be bestowing upon them an award tomorrow evening at our awards night because the job they did. The problem we have is these are average, ordinary human beings, just like you and I are, and the stress that we're putting them under, just by the increased workload, it is. Don't get me wrong; they understand what they're getting into. They totally understand that. But when you throw in the fact of people taking vacations, and then you have people, we've had people with long-term illnesses we've had to cover. So this guy's life becomes a living nightmare when he's trying to schedule to get people to work. And when you have people that you are having to work 19 straight hours, that's a problem. That, I think, is part of the problem why we've had the turnover we've had, because they don't have the luxury of taking a nap. They're live. I mean, you go from 0 to 100 in that job in a matter of seconds. It's truly, I have all the admiration in the world. It's a job that I did when I was a youngster. I did one summer in Hampton Beach. They hired a dispatcher the Hampton Fire Department. In 1984, I did it for one summer. I said I never want to do it again. It's craziness. These are special people that we have, and it's just, we've come to that point where we've got to do something to help them.
Follow-up, Alderman Jennings?
Chief, I'm just trying to make sure I understand what it is you're asking for. What is it that you're asking for, and is it different than what's in the mayor's budget?
We are asking for 4 employees. We initially asked to begin at Q3. The mayor has gone for Q4. We're okay with that.
Okay.
We're good with that.
So it is in the budget for Q4?
Yes.
That's correct.
Well, excuse me, I think he's included funding that would take care of us for Q4, yes.
Okay. I'm going to go to Alderman McCarthy first and then to Alderman Kelly.
Well, first, I just would comment that funding in the budget this year quadruples in next year's budget by nature.
Correct.
So just the members of the board should be aware of that. It's just, we will have a built-in increase to get those to full-time. Curiosity question, how many nuisance calls does the dispatch center get in a day? You know, you've won the Nigerian lottery, Windows technical support needs your password, that kind
Fortunately,
of
that still is occurring. One of the things that I deal with every September is the beginning of a new school year, and all of our employees registering their children, and the automatic calls for delayed opening in Litchfield and Hudson and other communities, sifting through those. And unfortunately, we still are rampant to receive telemarketing phone calls.
And I assume that number has actually gone up substantially in the last year or two.
It has.
I mean, it's a silly question, but is the dispatch number on the do not call list?
Yes, I've registered them all.
But you get them anyway.
And that's kind of our problem is they don't have the luxury of not answering a phone call.
Right.
There could be incidents, and the superintendent could probably speak better to it, but I'll throw it out there. We could have an accident on the Everett Turnpike and get 10 phone calls. And 8 of those phone calls are like, okay, where is it? I don't know. I was driving southbound and I saw it in a northbound lane. And it could be the 9th phone call that says, I'm in the southbound lane at mile marker 4.2. That's where we're at. And it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating for the personnel in there. And again, there's no way to weed out those calls as to what's coming in or not.
And the face of emergency communications has changed, text to 911. But also now we even get requests for services third party from Facebook and Twitter. It can be difficult.
So I guess the only thing I'd say is I've noticed the volume of do not call anyways go up dramatically in the last couple of years. And here's a case where if the FCC would actually work on administering that, there are places where it would have a real effect other than just eliminating annoyances. This is a place where it impacts public safety.
Absolutely.
Well, even with, if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Even with that, so we've done I had the superintendent do a look back on calls for service from 2014 to, we can only go to 17 because that's a complete year. So 2014, we did a 3.4% increase over 13. This is calendar year. 15, we were minus 0.12%. 16, we jumped up 2.26%. In 17, we jumped up 15%. And this year so far, the months of January, February, and March are our busiest months in the history of the organization. Every month, we continue to break records. In April, we were 4 calls for service short of last year's number, which was the highest ever, of 2,955. So it's just when we, part of it is, I think, as I alluded to in my initial statement, between the state and the federal government, they've cut a lot of programs. There's a lot of people in need. And these people don't know what to do anymore. And so what do? They dial 911. And unfortunately, that's what we do.
Alderman Kelly?
Thank you. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the relationship with AMR. Is that a typical relationship for a city to have? And why do you do those calls?
I think it is. I think we have better control so they have a contract with the city, but by us dispatching them, we definitely have better control where we know where their units are. We know when they have 4 ambulances that are contracted with the city, 4 911 ambulances that are available. I think they do a lot of this throughout the country. They have a lot of places where they do it. Their closest dispatch center is in Springfield, Massachusetts, for AMR. So the city of Manchester also does the same thing. They dispatch for AMR as well.
Chief, if I may, it also allows, with that, having commonality in radio frequencies and deployment, we know where those resources are and are also better suited to us to get those messages to them immediately. It's very common that the moment the ambulance and the engine or the fire apparatus sign on, we're giving them critical updates, whether the scene security, the safety, or progression of the medical event.
And one other. I know you guys say you have 2 full-time people, one on radio and one telephone. What's the third person going to do? A mix of both, one or the other?
Absolutely. There's several different ways. One, we could start to deploy a matrix of dedicated radio operations and allow those one operator to either take the remaining radio for the city and phone, but primarily would probably be to handle the phone traffic as that first comes in. There's a lot of tasks that get put off in the day, record keeping and logs and so forth, to later periods, and that could be deployed at that time, but also spreading out that call volume throughout the day.
Thank you.
Other questions? Alderman Tenza?
I understand the department receives a number of calls for non-emergency related issues that come up. You gentlemen are making me feel bad because I think I called Saturday night to get a burn permit, and now I know that I increased someone's workload. I'm wondering, and like so many other city services, the fire department came out. They looked in my backyard, and it was no cost to us. Made sure we were safe. I'm wondering though, if are there other departments or other places within the fire department that calls like that can go? Because I didn't call 911 for that call. Is to lessen the burden on the call center or on dispatcher.
They're the gatekeeper. They are the resource manager. They are the tracker. That is historically, and I think forever will be the model of, if you look at fire alarm offices anywhere, that's who knows where the vehicles and the companies are, and they're kind of like the accountability. They're the main accountability officer for the organization, so they know where they've sent them. They know how long they've been there. They know what they sent them for. It's just
Also, to the chief's, we're also looking at leveraging technology. So we are starting to use Code Red, the city's Code Red system, to notify people when burning is not allowed. We are trying to work with IT to see some online permitting aspects to reduce some of that call volume, as you just denoted. But I would imagine not a single person in this room would like to receive an automated system asking them to press this or that to find another person to assist them in that tree when there may be an emergency or anything else. We do definitely find that we sometimes don't know why is that people call this number in comparison to that number with all the technology that's out there. We still receive a great deal of emergency calls on our 7-digit phone lines.
All said, Alderman Tenza?
I had one follow-up,
Sure.
but I forgot it. No, actually, so do you have a sense of how many calls you receive, how many non-emergency calls you receive on that line? And things for like the burn permit, I know that you charge to go out for new development and do fire assessments. No?
No.
Okay. Maybe you can explain in the revenue line item then about.
The revenue line item, well, that would be, there is a fee for permitting,
But not,
but we don't,
Wildland.
there's not a wide-scale assessment, or that's plans review. And then we go out and we do the testing to make sure that it's compliant. One of the things that the dispatchers also maintain and oversee is the 100 milliamp municipal fire alarm system, which is the red fire alarm boxes all over the city. We as a city, you as the elected officials, we protect over 1.6 or 1.9 billion dollars of assessed real estate for your taxes. We don't charge additional money for that. Where if we didn't have that, by code, property owners of multifamily dwellings, commercial properties, would have to pay a commercial entity to monitor their systems, which would then in turn notify us of the issue. In this case, it notifies us directly.
Other questions? Alderman Jettie.
Is the AMR contract part of your budget?
No.
No? Do you know, anybody know where that is?
Alderman McCarthy, you know what part of the budget it's in?
I think it's in what used to be civic and community activities.
Thank
Sure,
you.
we'll get to it. Any other questions?
Alderman Dowd, may I make a couple of comments?
Absolutely, Commissioner.
Jeremy, the superintendent, alluded to turnover. And one of the reasons why we don't like turnover is we've invested in training and ongoing training in these individuals. And when somebody leaves, in addition to the cost to recruit, there's the cost that goes with training these individuals. So this would help us by relieving the stress, by relieving turnover, again, save some dollars in training. The chief pointed out to the 100 milliamp system, the Gamewell system. You will probably see on TV, on Channel 9, that Portsmouth has eliminated that system. Difference between Nashua and Portsmouth, they don't use it to provide fire alarm capabilities to their multifamily dwellings and their commercial as a requirement of code. So we've used what is a system that was originally purchased by the city, I believe in about 1873, has been modified and expanded, and still can grow as we grow in new development in the city. So if you see that on TV tonight, we have used that system in a much different and more effective system than just the street call box.
Additional questions? Alderman Melissa Goldie.
Yes, thank you. No questions. Just a comment. For those of us who have sat through budget meetings in the past, I think we're familiar with this growing need. And as the chief and as Commissioner Grant spoke to, the stress from this job leading to turnover should be a great concern to all of us. And from the calls that we heard, remembering that it's not only the lives of our firemen that we're worried about and we're concerned about, but also the safety of our citizens. And there's a lot going on. And I know, appreciate the talented people we have working there, but again, we don't want to lose them. And certainly moving forward and looking at adding the additional staff at the end of this quarter for this upcoming fiscal year should hopefully reduce some of the stress that our current employees are feeling.
Any other questions or comments? Just one question. you mentioned that most people have cell phones now, and they make a call, and they call 911. I know when I reported something, you call 911, you end up somewhere in Concord or somewhere, and they have to transfer the call to Nashua when they find out where it's involved. Can you track the location of the cell phone so you know,
Yes.
you have a better idea where the
Yes. So the
emergency
initial
is?
call they were asking you immediately right off, is it fire, EMS, or police? Based on that question, if they see that you're calling from a cell phone, they'll verify location that you know, and they'll have mapping from the tower there. It may take some time, depending on the age of the phone, to get what's called phase 2, which is a more exact location in a lower concentric circle. And then that information is passed down through the city's or the 911's dedicated network that we have, and we see that call coming in and can look at that triangulated location of that cell phone.
Okay. Does that process with a cell phone cause more time than a direct line that would add to the workload of your dispatchers?
The direct line would not allow us that triangulation location, which sometimes is the make or break for
Okay.
a call that doesn't know.
So,
And if I could just speak to one aspect that I'd love anyone who watches this to keep in mind is voice over internet phones. You need to update your locations. Just because you unplugged it from your network at your first home and moved it, you need to physically notify the carrier that you moved. We've had several calls for Nashua residents who have moved to Florida, and they're calling with a heart attack or medical emergency, but because they have not updated their location, people must do that. And that will definitely save time, because whatever you've registered your phone with on a voice over internet telephone, that stays there until you change it again.
is there any way that we can make more of the people aware of that somehow?
Certainly, we could talk with emergency management, reach out to elderly services and pass those messages on.
Okay. Yep. Maybe the mayor's newsletter too.
Yep.
Yes.
I just thought of this, and I have a question. In talking about the increase in volume of non-emergency calls, one of the things I have heard in the past is that people often call fire because they don't want the legal involvement of the police. And I think we need to recognize that there are times when you would think, why didn't they call the police? But they made a conscious decision to not call the police because they want help, but they don't want police involvement. And, we have a variety of situations within a community that could result in that decision being made. But I know I have heard people saying, oh, I didn't want the police there, so I called fire. And I think that's a reality of some of the non-emergency calls. That's my gut.
It's a good thing they got a direct line to the police station. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, maybe we're giving the wrong impression that we're overloaded with non-emergency calls. I don't think that's the case at all. I think we have, thank you to the many years of support by the Board of Aldermen and the mayors of this city, we have appropriate staffing in our fire companies. There's a reason why you don't see us on Channel 9 and on the front page of the Telegraph and the Union Leader. And that's because this city has, for many years now, staffed our fire companies appropriately. And we're a business, we're an occupation that takes people. You could give us 100 more fire trucks, and you could give us $2 million fire trucks. But if we don't have the human beings to operate those and to do all those tasks, we'd be on the news all the time. We have so many incidents in the course of a day that go on that no one knows about because they're handled so quickly and efficiently and professionally by our staff that, sometimes it's almost, it's a deterrent to us to have to come before you and say, look, we're busy, we have this, and we've taken a role. I don't know if any of you are into social media. I know for me, I stayed away as long as I could. Thank goodness. Chief Gallipo allowed me to say, Chief, we need to start promoting ourselves out here. We have a very active Twitter account. We have a very active, the Fire Marshal's Office has a Facebook account. And we're trying to highlight the good that our members do every day because, we've been staying under the radar for so many years. And again, to bring this all together, our service delivery people are here and our support people are here. And that's where we got to try to help us with that balance. That's kind of what we're looking for. So.
The other thing is, we have a lot of new members on the Board of Aldermen this year, and one of the great things to get a tour of is your training facility at the landfill. You were able to get a new building out there to use, as the other one had deteriorated. It might be a good idea if at some point, as the weather is warming up, to have some of the new aldermen have an opportunity to go out there. I know that, I forget how long ago it was, but Mayor Donchis and I went climbing ladders, dragging hoses through a burning fire, and it was a great experience to understand what your people go through every single day, almost.
Well, we would love to have that opportunity, and we've tried it in the past, and sometimes the attendance was less than we wanted, but it's something we had just talked about, Assistant Chief Walker and I. There are many things, and that is a big one we'd like to do is open up. As Chief Morrissey used to say, we open the window, let's open the curtains to the fire department and let everybody see. And Chief Gallipo, I think, pulled them open even farther, and I'm ready to pull them open even farther. So open invitation to any of the board to come to see us at any time. And I think you would be very impressed with the operation of our members in emergency services, but also in our members in the fire alarm division. Our fire marshal's office does a great job, our mechanical division, and our training and safety division. I think those divisions are, at this point, those are the unsung heroes of our organization because they're doing it behind the scenes that no one sees, but they're keeping our trucks safe and running. They're keeping our people safe with the radio and communications and our citizens. They're keeping our businesses open. They're doing our life safety inspections. And then the training and safety division is training our employees, which is our greatest asset as a city.
One additional question. As the population around Nashua grows, how is the level of mutual aid? Is it increasing, staying the same?
Obviously, we give more than we get.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking.
But I think, as Chief Lavoie alluded to, I think that's what comes from being a larger city. When that's what we do. We have never had any of our smaller communities say no to us when we call them, and we depend on them greatly at times.
Well, we have had opportunity to call in a lot of mutual aid. One budget night 1 or 2 years ago, right down the street, when we had an alderman that was questioning mutual aid, we took him down there and showed him all the trucks from Lowell and every place else that were there, and that was the end of that question.
Yep. Thankfully, that doesn't happen too often.
Yeah. Okay. Any last questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you to all of you, and thank you for your service to the city.
Yes, Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to postpone R 18019 until the next Budget Review Committee.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to postpone R 18019 until the next Budget Review Committee, which, by the way, is tomorrow, Thursday night. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Unfinished business ordinances,
There are none.
new business,
There is none.
general discussion. Alderman McCarthy.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment in further response to Alderman Jetti's question about the ambulance contract. We don't pay them. They are paid by insurance. We just have a contract with them to provide the service for our 911 pickups. So there is no budget item, I don't believe, associated with it.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. Thanks, Chief. Public comment, is there anyone that would like to make public comment? No. Remarks by Alderman.
Yep.
Yes, Alderman Wiltshire.
Thank you. I always appreciate the effort put in by the fire department. You're all unsung heroes in my book, so thank you.
Yep. Alderman Gothright?
I too. Over the years, I've had plenty of opportunities to have the fire rescue come to the house before the AMR and all that and take loved ones from the house. And at all times, they were very professional. And just the fact that they could do a blood pressure or draw blood for a diabetic is just amazing. That the things that they could do to help prior to AMR getting there. And I truly do appreciate you guys for many years, even before my father passed. So, thank you.
And based on the sign on the elevator, I hope you don't get a call tonight about somebody getting stuck in it.
Oh, I have one more.
Oh,
And
yes.
several years ago, I did attend over at the landfill. And I think it was Diane Sheehan and myself were there that time. And that was amazing. It was quite frightening because you really had to wear the gear, and they taught us how to put the gear on and all that. And literally be in a simulated burning building, and the heat just, it was, I mean, really, it was really frightening to me. That I had the young guy that was with me. I said, I got to get out of here. So he kindly got me out of the building, you know. But it gave me a different appreciation for what you really do. So again, thank you all.
Nothing like being face to face with a fire.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. We have no need for non-public. Alderman Wiltshire.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 8:02.